again, all these things are to establish paternity. In any event, so this is the point that I'm saying, though, that within Judaism we cannot accept the secular world's ideology of what they would call ethical non-monogamy or polyamory or so forth, because even without the ethical issue, so then we have the Torah issue, is that a woman cannot have more than one man, and kind of part of the ethics that we have in the secular world is that there's an egalitarianism between the husband and the wife both having this lack of commitment, and that they tell each other about it, or whatever it is, they both know about it. It's not ethical, and it's not moral, and it's not halachic. In any event, so going back to this, where it's not fair, we would say to the woman, it's not egalitarian, that just the husband could have more than one partner, but the wife can't. Well, no, it's not ethical that way, and so that's why our rabbis wanted to level the playing field, more or less, in order to protect the rights of the women. And so that's why in our society, and it's, and it's not just, a lot of people would say, well, the Ashkenazim, they lived among Christians where their norm was monogamy, and the Sephardim lived among Muslims where the norm was polygamy. But like we said, the Sephardic ketubah generally adds or includes a shvuah to that we would not practice polygamy. So except in really in those two countries of Yemen and Morocco, polygamy was not a common thing in the Jewish world. Also, part of it is that you have to have the means to do that. So you have to be particularly wealthy. Pretty much you would need a separate house. I understand among the Mormons it was a different issue. It was that, somebody, it wasn't about the, necessarily really having more than one wife. It was that in those days, a single woman didn't have much protection. And so when you had a man died and this woman and her children needed someone to take care of them, there was someone who was able to, well, then they would marry them. But even the Mormons banned polygamy quite some time ago, well over 100 years ago. So so you only have these small, what they call the fundamentalist Mormons that are rejected by the mainstream Mormon church that still practice polygamy today. And so again, essentially you're going to say, well, how can we dare judge our avos? Well, it's because they lived in a different society. Meaning, Yaakov Avinu, Jacob, that was the society he lived in, and so I'm not judging someone who lives in a society where that's the norm. But when norms change, we have to be strict according to the norms. Meaning, when norms become lenient, we are not given a license to loosen what's normative and to be more liberal. But when the norms are more conservative, our rabbis guided us that is the way to live. Now, there are exceptions to every rule, and so within the framework of the Judaism and Rabbenu Gershom, it's not clear whether it was in the original Cherem or it was added later. We have the Heter Mei Rabbanim. The idea that if you have 100 rabbis from 3 different countries, or 3 different states, whatever it is, 3 different communities, or more, could be from 5, 10, or 100 different communities. We have 100 rabbis who sign off that someone has the permission to marry without divorcing his wife. So that is where we have that there is not a total ban on polygamy, but it's in the case where the marriage is no longer really a marriage anymore. Meaning, you have a case of a woman who is missing. We don't know if she's alive or dead. A woman who is mentally ill. A woman who perhaps you had a civil divorce and the woman is refusing the religious divorce. They're separated, they're not getting back together. And like we said, Rabbenu Gershom banned a man from divorcing his wife against her will. And so therefore, just like there's the, which again is to level the playing field, just like, the man has to be the one who does the divorce, and so therefore, unfortunately, sometimes there's this, what they call the aguna, the woman who is chained to her husband because he refuses to divorce her. And so some people say, so then the rabbis, they give a heter me'arabanim. No, they don't. They give the heter me'arabanim only in the case where the woman refuses to accept the divorce. And even in that case, it's a very rare thing. So I heard of, I heard of a case where someone, she wasn't religious anymore, and so she said she would only accept a divorce if she was married to a rabbi. She would only accept the divorce if he gave her all of his money, which was, I don't know, $5,000 or $10,000, something like that. And he did it. All of his savings he gave to her, because otherwise she wouldn't accept the get, because she didn't care anymore. And she was really abusing him. And I asked this rabbi, I said, well, what about a heter me'arabanim? He said he spoke to his rabbis, and they said it's not ethical. So even though there is such a thing as a heter me'arabanim, it's not very often used. And so here's a case like this. He was being abused by his ex-wife, being taken advantage of, and he gave in because he felt it was the ethical and moral thing to do. On the other hand, I heard of another case, similar case, also a rabbi, and the wife insisted on something like $5 million, or else she would not accept the get. And that rabbi did receive a heter me'arabanim. And she was also a very mentally ill person. She was someone who accused her first husband of a very horrible crime, and he got 30 years in federal prison for something that he probably didn't do. I don't believe he did. And she went and married the Hasidic Rebbe. I guess part of the difference, some people would say, is that the story was a Hasidic world where they got the heter me'arabanim, and in the modern Orthodox world they usually don't give it because it's considered to be immoral, even unethical, immoral, I guess unethical, even though halacha allows this idea of the permission of 100 rabbis. It's discouraged because of the ethical and moral implications of it. So that is really what it comes down to. The norms of the community where one lives, either way, they're not giving this permission so easily or so quickly, and even when it is given, it's only given in very, very rare cases, such as like where someone is not, basically the marriage is not a functional marriage anymore. And even in those cases, most rabbis today don't want to give it. And even in the old days, there was Reb Tzadok of Lublin, right? He became a chassid. He joined the Hasidic movement because he was trying to get a heter me'arabanim. And the sons of Rav refused to sign the heter me'arabanim. And he told him, go back to your wife or else you'll never have children. And this was before he was a chassid. He was very frum and very action. He was very, very stiff-necked, very stubborn, and he got eventually the heter merabanim, and he never had children from Tzaddik. So his children were all his children because we have his Sfarim. But biologically, he never had children because of his Mises. So even in the Hasidic world, it's very rare to give a heter merabanim. It's not, and it's never given in the case where the wife wants a get and the husband doesn't want, and they're both healthy and well. And then it's never given. And then we push the man to give the get. So this. So again, we're talking about societal norms. Now the question is, what if you're not part of a community? Meaning, we can say certain things within Jewish law. If you're not part of a community, let's say something like kitnios and Pesach. The Sephardim, they eat kitnios and Pesach, and the Ashkenazim don't. And what if you're not part of any community, and your family wasn't religious, or you yourself, you're a convert, or whatever it is, and you come into a community, whatever, it's much easier to permit a ritualistic issue like whether or not you eat beans or rice on Passover, which, also there's not much of a reason to actually prohibit it, even though I don't eat kitnios on Pesach, but there's no ethical or moral issue about eating kitnios. There's no even more controversial things like like using electricity or electronics on the Sabbath and so forth, where it's not a societal norm, and even issues of tznius, issues of modest dress. If a woman has to cover her hair, if it's okay for a woman to wear slacks that are for women and they're loose fitting, so they're otherwise they cover everything, and does she have to wear a skirt? Does she have to cover her hair? Does a man have to wear a yarmulke? These things are not in the realm of ethics and morals, and like we said, they're eretz kodem l'Torah. Ethics and morals, those things come first. And so if one is not part of a community, I'm much more keen on being lenient on these issues about, meaning you cannot violate a malacha or an Isser D'Rabbanan on Shabbos. You're not allowed to touch muktzah, nothing like that on Shabbos. No one can, because that's a decree of Chazal. That's from the Sanhedrin. But when it comes to these other things that our Rishonim and our Achronim discuss, yes, no, if you're not part of a community, it's definitely best to follow Shulchan Aruch. It's definitely best to follow the norms of our societies, because you might join into the society and so forth. Like people say, you won't get a shidduch if you won't. No one will want to marry you if you're lenient about using electricity on the Sabbath, and or if you're of Ashkenazic extraction and you're and you're going to eat the kitnios on Pesach or whatever it is. These types of things. But still, nonetheless, if you're in the middle of nowhere and you're doing your own thing in a certain sense, there's what to be lenient on things that have to do with the Rishonim and Achronim, that are their opinions and that are locally binding. But when it comes to this issue of polygamy, it's much wider than just the Judaism of Rabbenu Gershom, like we demonstrated. The Sephardic communities have accepted this. So the only thing is, if a Sephardic Jew is in the situation of where an Ashkenazic Jew might receive a heter merabanim, so the Sephardic Jew would still need some kind of a heter, whether or not he made the shvuah in the ketubah, which generally we do. I was Messiah Kedushin for Sephardim too, and we put it in the ketubah. That's part of the way it's done. But when it comes to this question, it's not a practical issue nobody is going to say that's normative to openly live in a polygamous relationship within Judaism. Are there people who do it? Yes. Are they committing a capital sin? No. Are they violating the rabbinical laws? Like we said, you have to keep the laws of muksa, this, that. No. Are they? But the societal norms are something that's important, and so therefore, just like wearing a yarmulke, covering the hair, these types of things are accepted both by Sephardim and Ashkenazim. Let's leave kitnius out of it. Not using electricity on Shabbos. These are things that are normative. These are things that are accepted. But I would say that this type of a living situation, in a way, is worse than those types of violations, because this is not how we live. This is not how society works. And so there's such an idea in Chazal, that the spirit of the sages doesn't go with the zeitgeist of the way that the sages looked at things. And so therefore, even if Lu Yitzur, and it's very hard to say one way or the other that the Cherem of Rabbenu Gershom was not in effect, it would have no practical difference. And even, like we said, even in those cases where one might get the Heter Me'Rabbanim, the normative way of the more liberal Jews in general, of the, meaning you talk to someone from YCT, from Avi Weiss, his students, and his yeshiva, and I know he's retired, but the other chevra there, and you're going to say that like this, they are liberal about a lot of things, right? They're liberal about conversions. They're liberal, and they're also sometimes turning to the left, and they're concerned about ethics and morals. Sometimes too much, to a place where it's untenable. But perhaps that's there is place to say. They will not say. They're the ones who are going to say you cannot have a heter me'Rabbanim even, right? Except in very, very rare, meaning cases where maybe the ultra-Orthodox rabbis might be lenient about it, and allow a heter me'Rabbanim. The modern Orthodox rabbis are going to be strict. So it goes without saying that in the case where no one would give a heter me'Rabbanim, where it's an open thing, where that's how they want to live, and they want to make that a lifestyle, it would undermine the norms of society so much. We have to be strict. We have to be, if that's part of the Torah ideology, meaning when the society is strict, we have to be strict. But when the society is lenient, we don't become lenient. And so, since our society has been like, now, if things change, Mashiach comes, this and that, there's enough what to discuss, maybe, to be lenient at some point. But it doesn't look likely, and so therefore, no, we don't live like this. And the people who do, they're not doing the right thing. Are they doing a sin? I don't know, but they have placed themselves outside of the Torah society. Not only the normative Orthodox world, in the conservative world also, they wouldn't accept that. Although maybe again with so it's because of the reasons that we discussed. The conservative, they wouldn't accept it either, because it's immoral, it's unethical. And so therefore, if a person commits a sin, they commit a sin, and they have to repent for it, and they have to make a tikkun, and so forth. It's a different story. And I'm not saying from the story of the Berditchever that it's better to commit a sin that's koreis than a sin that's not koreis, as far as the issues of the mikveh. And I'm also not discussing the Shilas Yavitz about Pilegish. It's not for now. And I know they have these Pilegish personals and this and that. It's not normal. It's not the way. And you notice, it's not so often the women who are looking for these things. If someone just say, if again we want to talk about a marriage with less responsibilities or something, maybe which would be strongly discouraged in our society. If a couple wants to be married and wait to have children for a year or two and they're young, still, I know, again, from the modern Orthodox world, Rav Willig was a big tzaddik and a big Talmid Chacham. He strongly discourages that, at least for the first child. He said, for the second child, he'll be lenient, but for a first child, he doesn't. Just again, for an ethical, moral stance, for many reasons. These are things to consider. That would be probably as opposed to, and again, we're not talking about polygamy here. We're talking about a boyfriend and girlfriend type of situation. If a couple wants to be married and wait a year to have children, still, that's not really the way. First of all, it should be 9 months, at least, So you're saying maybe they're waiting 3 months. I don't know, or it just doesn't happen for a little while, But it's, with that being said, still, that's the closest thing. I mean, you're married, you have a chasna, you do everything right. You wait a little bit. Within the modern Orthodox world, that's something that's a little bit more acceptable. And also, once they have children, to have fewer children, these things are more acceptable. But again, there's a lot of societal pressure. But halachically speaking, certainly once you have a boy and a girl, if you want to use birth control, things like that, there's where to discuss that thing, but that's a different story. That is, perhaps more closely related to this question of living together before marriage, that type of thing. Which is obviously frowned upon. But again, are there different things within the modern Orthodox world? But this polygamy question, that everyone would agree, we don't do that. It's not just a halachic issue. It's a moral and ethical issue, and so it's not for me to pass judgment. But I'm saying this is how our society functions as a Torah society, and that's what we're talking about. Thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe, comment. We'll see you later.